This is Jill Cleese, and I'm the SJSU Career Center Liaison to SLIS. I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight for a discussion on academic librarianship, where our speakers will be sharing information about current trends and opportunities in the field. We have the great pleasure to have 3 academic librarians with us tonight to share their unique experience and expertise in this area. Our session will last for 1 hour. I ask you to hold your questions until about the last 15 minutes of the session and to keep the dialogue in the chat box to a minimum while our speakers are presenting. We'll let you know at the end when we open it up to Q&A. This session is being recorded and will be made available on the SLIS Colloquia page. So let's get it started. We're going to start with Sandy Vella, our first speaker. I'm going to move this slide along to here. There we go. So Sandy Vella, take it away.
Oh, hello. I'm going to be talking about the instruction positions in academic libraries, what some of the basic requirements are, and what are some new developments that I'm seeing showing up in recruitments and job ads. First of all, academic libraries are really in a time of great change, and certainly UC Davis is a prime example of that. The changes that I'm going to be talking about, some of them here at Davis, are also happening in other major academic libraries. So, I'm going to set the stage and talk a little bit about what's happening at UC Davis. First of all, UC Davis is primarily a residential college with approximately 32,000 students, of which 6,500 are graduate students. The changes where we are going to be seeing some changes that are going to impact the way our campus is set up. Right now, we have primarily our students are full-time students, and we have over 100 academic majors and 90 graduate programs, including programs in law and medicine. We are a big school, and we are growing. We hope to reach 40,000 in the near future. The campus vision and goals call for increased collaboration in research and teaching, both locally, nationally, and globally. And one of UC Davis's major new initiatives is to incorporate more international students into our student population. This means that we need to increase our offerings of online classes to accommodate this new, larger student body, which will be really located globally. UC, both at the Office of the President level and at the campus level, has been encouraging faculty to change their courses from face-to-face courses to online or hybrid courses. Governor Brown is also heavily encouraging us to do that, to develop online classes. And as we move toward the online, we're going to need to change our library instruction to make it more accessible online and to develop more online tools. UC is also looking at massive open online courses, although at this time we haven't made any decisions as to whether to participate. Coursera, the people in charge of that massive open online course came and talked to our faculty and administrators recently. But there is a possibility that, maybe down the line we'd be joining the other 33, 35 academic libraries who are currently giving courses around the world through this mechanism. Now, with changes on our campus, we also have changes in the university library. We have a new university librarian, Mackenzie Smith, who is very technology orientated. And we are in the process now of revising or reviewing all our functions and services, as well as the organizational structure of the library, in order to create a more fully online library. So we have developed a new 3-year strategic plan, and I would advise all of you to go to the UC Davis Library website and take a look at that plan. It still says draft on it because we are still getting comments from the faculty and the deans and high-level administration, but basically you'll see the direction that UC Davis is going in. And the direction that you see there really is a direction that other major academic libraries have already started on, if not actually implemented. So take a look at that. And as part of our new strategic plan, instructional librarians will be asked to leverage online technologies to deliver instruction and lifelong learning. We've also, as part of this long-range plan, you will see that there is a heavy emphasis on assessment. So we'll be developing more assessment mechanisms for instruction, and we'll be developing more partnerships with faculty and various other campus groups, such as the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, academic technology support groups within information technology. Now, we have already done this, and we've already worked with a lot of these people. But, for instance, a colleague and I, just this past summer, worked with a faculty member who was changing his face-to-face class to an online class. And we developed some assignments that were incorporated into the online class. We developed information on LibGuides to help the students use the resources and complete the assignment. So we are doing this already. But with this great emphasis on online classes and international students, we absolutely must gear up very quickly to work in this new environment. So, what does this mean for today's instructional librarians? Well, all these factors point to the need for an instruction librarian with skill sets that include pedagogy, an understanding of technology for teaching, and also knowledge of how to implement assessment, especially in instruction. Now, what requirements do I look for? What I would recommend for anyone that's interested in going into instruction in the field of library work. First of all, and you're going to hear this from all the speakers today, we need librarians that are welcome to change, that are open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. So flexibility is extremely important in all new librarian hires. For an instruction librarian, I would be looking for someone that has knowledge of information literacy theory, practice, and assessment techniques, what I call the basics. And of course, ACRL has all the standard guidelines and that we would be using, and you will be learning them while you're going to library school. But those are the basics I would expect. Then I'm looking for someone that has an interest and excitement in emerging technology for instruction. I'm looking for interest in new uses of technology to create a more interactive, engaged classroom. I'm looking for someone who has the ability to work with a diverse clientele from different countries and different educational systems, and also different parts of our campus community. I would be looking for someone who has the ability to educate in an online environment and build user-centered online instructional tools. I'm also looking for someone who actually has good presentation skills, because you can have all the other knowledge base, but you still have to be able to present your information well. And I'm also looking for someone that has leadership skills, because the individuals, the instructional librarians do work with a variety of people on campus. They need to have, to be able to have their ideas, develop projects, and be able to persuade and convince others to join us in our new endeavors. But what is new, as far as I'm concerned, is this knowledge of instructional design. And what do I mean by that? I think that it implies an ability to build quality instructional sessions with defined outcomes in mind, and then have a delivery method to achieve those goals, which should or can include technology, include the development of instructional materials and activities, and an assessment method to verify if you've actually achieved your outcomes. So basically, what this new skill of instructional design assumes that you're going to have the pedagogy or the knowledge of how to teach well, and have a knowledge of technology for teaching, all the tools that are out there, all the emerging technology, know how to use it, and also have assessment skills. And take a look at these titles. These are job titles. I just went and looked at jobs this month on the various listservs that I'm on. And these listservs are instruction listservs. They are also distance education listservs. And I find that, yes, there are still jobs with the title Instruction Librarian or Reference and Instruction Librarian. But most of them that I saw had these titles: Library Instructional Designer, Instructional Design and Technology Librarian, Instruction and E-Learning Librarian, Instructional Design and Integration Librarian, and so forth and so forth. What you notice when you look at the actual job description is that these are still library jobs. These jobs are still asking for MLISs. They want librarians. That's a basic requirement. But in addition to a traditional instruction job that's mentioned and the skills required, these jobs also ask for experience in instructional design. They're not looking for a BA in instructional design. They want someone with some knowledge and experience in instructional design. And I think that this is a brand new change that's happening. When we interviewed 2 high-level candidates for university librarian about a year ago, and both of them indicated that they were looking for instructional designers. And what I think that the directors at these libraries, with the jobs that you see in front of you, I think that what they're doing is sort of slowly easing us librarians into this. They are still looking for a librarian with an MLIS, but they're going to help us move into this area of instructional design. So what can you do to prepare for the job market? Well, if you are still in school, and I'm assuming most of you are, first of all, if you're at San Jose State University's library school, which is a totally online program, I congratulate you. I think you're far ahead of the game, because I believe your experience as an online student is going to really help prepare you for the future. You are already familiar with online platforms. You already have an understanding or are seeing how assignments can be prepared, either effectively or not, in the online environment. So you are actually learning by experience what works and what doesn't work in an online environment. So I would suggest that when you write your cover letter, you definitely mention the fact that you are experienced with an online environment. Now, as far as classes are concerned, what I would expect is that you take classes that cover learning theory, pedagogy, assessment, classes that talk about design and the creation of digital learning objects. Of course, classes that have the basic information, such as ACRL information literacy guidelines and standards. I would expect that for sure, and I know your teachers are providing that kind of information. I would also expect that somewhere during your school period, you would learn something about the research process. Have some experience and an understanding of a fairly wide range of common databases. And I would also expect that you would take 1 or 2 classes or maybe a webinar on instructional design or educational design. And like I said, you might be able to pick up some of that from your classes, might be components within your existing classes, or if not, there are webinars, there are conferences that you can attend that might help you get that necessary knowledge. And then, of course, I would expect that you take classes that include training on emerging technologies and their use in teaching and learning. And I would expect that you would be practicing with instructional tools that create little videos, such as Camtasia or Captivate software, or any kind of video capture and sharing. I would expect, too, that perhaps that you would also include web-based tools like LibGuides. And I'm hoping that your school experience will allow you to do that. And also, look at prior job experiences that you might have. If you've been involved in teaching at all, you can bring that in. If you've done some kind of volunteer work in teaching, bring that into your cover letter. And then, of course, if you haven't, take advantage of practicums where you can get some experience either teaching face-to-face, help out with the development of tools for online classes. Anyway, take advantage of those experiences while you're at school. Now, when you graduate, or even while you're in school, make use of your professional organizations. Basically, you have national conferences, you have state-level conferences, you have local activities and networks and dinner meetings. The bottom line is a lot of these conferences are now virtual, and so as you look around, you can take advantage of them for getting information on aspects of instruction, such as like conference programs or webinars, for networking, for actually job fairs. So there's a lot of information and networking that you can take advantage of through the conferences and webinars. And in fact, let me just tell you, the California Library Association's academic interest group, of which I served as chair for I just finished my role as chair, they have a webinar on instructional design for online learning environments taking place April 3rd for 2 hours from 3 to 5. And basically, you can be anywhere in the world and take advantage of that webinar, which I know has teachers there that actually work in online environments. So take advantage of ACRL's many conferences, and probably more easily you could take advantage of webinars. And webinars for students tend to be very reasonably priced. There are also specialized conferences for instruction librarians, such as LOEX, which is an educational clearinghouse for library instruction. And that one is based back east, but there's one called LOEX of the West, which is based in the western states. And then in each state, there is an ACRL state chapter, and they often have a lot of information and a lot of programs on instruction. In California, it is called the California Academic and Research Libraries, but ACRL exists in all states, so you might take a look at your local state ACRL chapter and see what they have to offer in the way of instruction. And then there are specialized conferences that deal with online and hybrid courses, such as the Sloan C Blended Learning Conference and the Sloan C International Conference on Online Education. So these are going to attract instructional librarians, faculty, and also instructional designers. There's another one I want to point out to you, and that's the New Media Consortium. It's nmc.org. please look at that website. It is a wonderful organization, an international community of experts in educational technology. Their primary focus is to look at emerging technology and highlight how it can be used in instruction and teaching. And they have an annual conference, they have webinars, they have something called a Horizon Report, which I'm not going to go into now, but it's on their website, and I'd really recommend that you attend. I've attended a couple of their conferences, and they're really wonderful. So that's all I'm going to say about the instruction area right now. I'm going to do a very quick review of the academic recruitment process here at UC Davis. At the end of this session, we'd be willing to answer any specific questions you might have on the recruitment process. But here, this is quick since I'm running out of time. But when you're looking for a job at UC Davis, we always use the Chronicle of Higher Ed. We use the ACRL newsletter, we use the ALA job list, and we also use specialty listservs like the instruction and distance education listservs that ALA has. So we try to use ALA in its various formats. And of course, you can always look at our library website. Now, before you start filling out your cover letter and resumes for jobs, please do your homework. Find out about the library. Look at the website, the library's website. If you look at ours, you can definitely tell that we've got some exciting new ventures with our new strategic plan. So try to understand the library. Look at the website, do a Google search on the University Librarian and other key people in the library. Find out who the head of the department is that you're hoping to join, so that you have some understanding of the organization before you even start writing. And then when you do write your cover letter and submit your resume, make sure that you are applying for a job that you actually have a chance, that you have some skills or education to fulfill. So don't send out your resume just to any and every job. Don't do that. Look at the job and then make sure you tailor your resume as well as your cover letter to that specific job and that specific organization. Very important. Also, remember to check out your social media sites, your Facebook, and any other sites that you use, because really people in search committees do tend to look at these things, and you never know who's looking. So make sure it represents you well. And then, if you are invited to interview, you will spend the day meeting everybody in the library, the university librarian, all the associate university librarians, the head of HR, the search committee, and of course some faculty as well. You will be asked, if you're an instruction librarian, you will be asked to do a class presentation, maybe 20 minutes of it, in which case I would prepare it as if I was given the full 50-minute session and develop handouts, develop any kind of videos that you want to go with it. Even if you are not an instructional librarian, you will be asked to do some kind of presentation. So just sort of expect it. So basically, make sure that you will be tested throughout the day to see how flexible you are. And it'll come in a variety of different ways and questions, but remember that it's very important to show that you're willing to learn, willing to change, willing to grow. And then timeline, basically for academic positions, it's not unusual for it to run 4 to 6 months before the search is completed. You have to, your packets go through many, many committees, from the search committee to anybody that's participating in the review, in the interview, to the university librarian, to the librarians. Librarians have an academic review committee, and so that it'll go through CAPA, it'll go through an outside body, which is similar, and they'll be looking at the packet, the Academic Federation, and then the Vice Provost will look at it. So it has to go through a lot of hands. So I've kind of run out of time, but we can answer any questions you might have later on. At this point, I'm sorry, I forgot to change it, but at this point, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Karleen Darr, who will talk to you about the many changes in technical services. Thank you very much.
Hey, Karleen, you just need to click on the talk button.
Okay. I'm sorry, I thought I had it clicked. Hi, everyone. I'm Karleen, and I'm here to share my view of technical services job opportunities. Thank you for having me on the panel this evening. There have been countless reorganizations in academic library technical services in the past 10 years. So I want to emphasize the areas I refer to as technical services. Technical services is often described as the building block or the infrastructure of the library. It's what goes on behind the outward-facing public services. And the term is used to describe, in general, the processing and maintenance of libraries' physical and electronic collection. The specific primary functions include acquiring or procuring resources in any format, cataloging, describing in a bibliographic format for discovery purposes, physical storage on site or a remote location or even electronically. And finally, preservation concerned with maintaining or restoring access to library materials. It's important to remember our past technical services organizations because parts of it remain in today's technical services structures. For centuries, the information world in libraries was based on physical objects, books, journals, and more recently, sound recordings. And when information is tied to physical formats, it's inevitably expensive and hard to find, and moving it around is slow and costly. In such an environment, it makes sense to build just-in-case collections. Academic technical services organizations were shaped by our collection management environment. We deployed automation in some areas, such as approval plans and automated cataloging, using OCLC, ILSs, and our vendors. So we're predominantly a print-based operation. Labor-intensive, because print environment requires many staff handling material once item by item. And academic libraries operate separately from other libraries, from the business of acquiring materials with vendors to independent, standalone catalogs. We also work isolated in some ways, in that we have specialization in languages and in formats that concentrate on one type of function, like acquisitions or cataloging. So today and in the future, we continue to see aspects of this type of organization because we're in the midst of a transition. Recently, the fundamental reality of the information world has changed. Now documents that our patrons need are very frequently available in digital formats that make them very easy to find and near instantaneous acquisition of them. Even print documents can be found and procured very quickly in the digital marketplace. We're seeing fundamental changes underway in scholarly communication, information technology, and in response to that, changes in academic technical services processes. New economic realities and emerging technologies are improving the acquisition of materials and network-level discovery and access. Efficiency and cost-benefit assessment are the top of technical services minds as new processes are developed. Technology-centric academic technical services has absorbed new technology and its related processes while dealing with diminishing staffs as positions are eliminated or reassigned to new responsibilities. Flexible, flattened, team structure. Trained paraprofessionals are taking increasing responsibilities in acquisitions and cataloging processes. Libraries are configuring technical services and structuring work for less specialization and more cross-training and work groups. Academic technical services are changing their managerial expectations for professional librarians, stressing leading, managing work groups and workflows. Technical services librarians are tapped as supervisors and trainers. I emphasize a hybrid environment. There hasn't been a complete shift from traditional collection building and technical services processing. There has been rethinking of technical processes and a willingness to experiment with new models. In this hybrid environment, you see blending of traditional responsibilities with new requirements for technical services jobs. Traditional purchase negotiations are merging with electronic resource license negotiation. Electronic formats require an understanding of copyright law and dealing with contracts for all aspects of electronic resources. Technical services librarians are working in partnership with subject expert librarians to obtain and provide access to print and electronic resources. The formation of work groups and projects require strong project management skills. And everyone in technical services has to be familiar with metadata. And those that specialize in providing description and access to library materials must be familiar with more than one type of metadata scheme and data exchange format. Preservation staff once were responsible for physical collections, and the challenge was photos, film, and sound recordings. In the digital environment, in the new age, digital environment responsibilities are developing in digital curation and big data. Here are the new responsibilities technical services is shifting towards in order to maintain and develop library services that are vital and relevant. What I mean by shared services collaboration skills is technical services staff partnering across departments with subject librarians and faculty or researchers to support collection building and discovery in the local library institution, or even across library institutional boundaries within consortia. It involves communication skills, critical thinking, and being on the front line for e-resource access and discovery issues. Traditional technical services language skills involve human communication. And in addition to verbal and written language skills, technical services is requiring data programming skills in XML, XLS, XSL, SLT, etc. It's become important to academic libraries to evaluate its collection and make decisions to make room for new material or for a redesign of library space. This is enabled by experts drawing from library management systems bibliographic data. We pull lists that include data elements like what percentage of foreign languages in the collection, what percentage of our collection was published before 2000, what's our availability in electronic formats in our circulation history. Academic libraries should be prepared to respond to the need for data set management, both supporting researchers' data needs during the course of the research project and providing ongoing preservation and access to data sets. Obtaining grant funding to offset the cost of technical services projects like digitization or experimentation with new metadata formats and schemes is important in this budget climate. Personnel management, the increased use of support staff to handle more complex responsibilities requires technical services professionals to take on managerial responsibilities. And innovative leadership in technical services requires design thinkers, a problem finder who figures out the solutions through collaboration and experimentation. So we can't ignore our history. Print will continue. In the field of archives and special collections, there are projects mounted to catalog our hidden collections, and of course, digitization projects based on materials in this area. Academic libraries continue to focus on building rich collections, but more of a focus on the electronic based on our user expectations. Data-driven or evidence-based reselection of collections. In this collection analysis activity, it's important to be knowledgeable about what areas are unique or used heavily or cost a lot, which areas can be digitized, identifying areas that are eligible to ship to a trusted shared repository for consortia or regional partners to share. Here's the terminology you need to be familiar with, and it's not at all comprehensive, but there are some important terms on this list. Demand-driven and e-preferred acquisitions. It isn't new, but it's on the rise and fairly established as a procurement model today. Technical services are beginning to flip the process of collection building on its head by striking deals that let their patrons' reading habits determine which works they purchase. Instead of guessing what their patrons will need and buying the books up front, libraries are striking deals with e-book vendors where the libraries get charged only when their patrons are using the digital text. No need to send away for books the purchaser did not think to acquire. Academic libraries are also identifying subject areas that patrons prefer to access electronically and adjusting their approval plans to accept electronic format rather than print. There are a number of initiatives in metadata arena, and I'll mention a few really briefly. RDA, Resource Description and Access, is a replacement for ACR2 revised cataloging rules, and Library of Congress implementation is just around the corner. Linked data describes a method of publishing structured data, and it enables data from different sources to be connected and searched. The Bibliographic Framework Transition Initiative is something that you need to watch. It's an LC project launched with several academic and national library partners, and its focus is to create a transition path from MARC 21 exchange format so that we can reap more benefits from a newer technology. And digital services fosters development, discovery, and preservation of research and scholarly materials in digital form from across an academic institution. It's digital collection building. Big data. Researchers are pumping out data that's big on volume, velocity, and variety. It's both structured and unstructured. Researchers require library partnership to organize, describe, and preserve their research. And this is an area that really is developing for technical services. These positions should look familiar to you. They're from recruitment sites. There are other job titles with slight permutations, but they're more or less the same. These jobs are technology focused. They are cross-functional based. And in other words, these positions work with other staff across departments, and they require project management skills. Managing digital information will be the greatest new challenge for technical services, providing access and preservation data. In spite of difficulties presented by shrinking academic library budgets, there are challenging technical services professional positions that will continue to fulfill traditional functions while absorbing complex technological new responsibilities. So this concludes my remarks about opportunities in technical services. And with that, I will turn the presentation over to Myra Appel, who will be talking about public services.
Hello. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My definition of public services will encompass collection, development, and management, reference, to a certain extent instruction, and outreach. And what I'm going to say certainly applies to large academic libraries, but also to smaller four-year colleges and even community colleges to a certain extent. Now, I have also included a sampling of current job titles, current this month. And as you can see, the titles are tremendously varied and don't look similar to job titles that we saw 5 years ago. Nevertheless, the last one, subject liaison librarian, about 50% of the job ads that I was seeing for public services positions still are more of the traditional subject specialist or subject liaison type of position. I'm going to briefly touch on the trends that are affecting change in public services. And the only one I want to go into real detail at this point is the changing research practices. We see annually an increase in interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary research, where a faculty member and students are working in 2 or more subject areas doing comparative work, or you may have collaboration between faculty and students in 2 or more different academic departments or disciplines. This is extremely important for the library and public service librarians because we have to address different subject needs, different format needs, and be able to match our patrons with the resources, with the type of information that they need. We also see an increase in the use of the many primary source materials that have been digitized and are freely available online through different institutions or services such as HathiTrust. And in addition, research budgets for faculty and graduate students are declining very, very rapidly. They do not have the money to travel as much, so we need to procure the information for them and make it available on site in terms of the primary source material we bring in through our interlibrary loan and through showing them where they can find this material online. The other point I wanted to emphasize is the global environment. There is an increasing collaboration among faculty around the world. And that presents some challenges for our public service librarians in working with a faculty member on site and one on the other side of the country, and maybe a third one in a different hemisphere. Also, we're seeing more students excuse me, coming from different countries and addressing their needs. Sometimes there are language issues, and we have to have the language experts to speak with them and to find materials in the vernacular languages that they're interested in. The trends in public services, again, scalable and sustainable library instruction and reference programs with flat budgets, a decrease in the number of librarians that are employed in many of our institutions. We have to develop programs that will meet the greatest number of people within our environments. Increased virtual reference support through mobile devices in many cases. We're experiencing and encouraging stronger collaborative relationships between librarians and the academic departments, and increasingly we are partnering with staff across departments within the library to provide the public services. So, for example, a librarian in technical services may partner with a reference librarian and work with faculty outreach or faculty data management. You know about the move to e-resources. I won't talk about that. I will talk about consultants. Reference librarians, subject specialists increasingly are serving as consultants, helping faculty with scholarly communication, copyright management, developing digital projects, preserving their data in whatever format the faculty member has that data. We're also turning our attention to marketing our services more broadly and more loudly, if you will, because we want to make sure that people know about what we have to offer, and that leads to user assessments. We are looking at the value of our services, our resources that we're making available, and measuring impact, because once more, our budgets and our time and our staff are limited. So I'm going to talk here about the skill sets that I see as important for public services librarians to have these days. And I will say it's been over 7 years since I hired the last librarian in my department. 7 years ago, I looked at many of these same things, but there are some additional new skills that I'm asking for if I were writing up a job position today. There are 3 areas. Attitudinal. Okay, a genuine ability to be nimble and flexible. We all say we are, but we must continue to work on those, hone those skill sets we have, because we have to handle multiple and simultaneous projects and responsibilities. Again, interpersonal and verbal skills. The willingness to be a lifelong learner is of paramount importance, because change is only going to speed up. And approaching each situation with an open mind. We have a lot of preconceptions as librarians, and our user assessments often show us that we are not accurate in the how we perceive users to use a particular resource, how often they use it, what the value is to the individual. So we have to be open to explore and to change our strategies and our ideas. The second skill sets fall in the technological category. And there's so many different technological options out there. I'm not going to list specific ones, just an overview of a few of the more important aspects as I see them. The ability to develop user interfaces and work with those data sets. Karleen spoke about this. Sandy spoke about it as well. An understanding of the existing legacy systems. You know, with budgets being constrained, we're not going to be able to move to the most exciting new system out there. We're not going to be able to relinquish a perhaps less sophisticated database that's produced by a small society, for example. So we need to know how those existing legacy systems work. Knowledge of the social media and application to reference and instructional support, again, through mobile devices and in many cases. This is of increasing importance. We know what the social media is today, but what's it going to be tomorrow or a year from now? We need to keep in touch with that and look at creative applications. Familiarity with a vast array of electronic resources. Well, there are. Here at Davis, we have access to hundreds, if not thousands, of both commercial and free e-resources. We have thousands of e-journals at this point. No, there's no possible way for us to have in-depth knowledge of how each of these work, but we need to be able to understand the basics, the underlying structure of the most important resources, and the algorithms of the resource. At Midwinter, I heard Stephen Abram, Vice President at Gale Cengage Learning, speak to these issues, and he identified in his mind the 2 most important skills for librarians to have: understanding of rights management, and the algorithms of the e-resources on which we rely. And by the way, I would like to invite you to take a look at his blog and a slide program that he put up from a February 11, 2013 presentation. He gave this presentation to the Edmonton Public Library. He has 149 slides, which are very illustrate in some creative ways a number of these concepts that I have mentioned here. I think you'd find it entertaining and very interesting of what a person in his position who has a broad picture of the information world that we're living in has to say about his vision of the future of libraries and librarians' skill sets. Last, I want to talk about experiential. These can also be educational, depending upon your particular background. Negotiation skills. You may have a knack for it, or you may have had some opportunity in a prior job or even in some classwork to develop negotiation skills. And I'm speaking in two different veins here. One, formal negotiations with vendors. Public service librarians often negotiate the license contracts for the resources that we purchase or subscribe to. Second of all, in negotiation, I mean negotiating with your patrons, negotiating with your colleagues. Again, resources are limited, people have limited time, and one needs to be able to hone and utilize the best negotiation skills possible in achieving the best outcome. Language skills. Well, remember, I'm speaking from California, and Northern California, 60 miles from San Francisco. The language skills that we see as so important here right now: Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, other Asian languages, and of course Spanish. The European language skills, German, French, they're still important, but for interacting with our patrons, helping them access vernacular language materials that have been published throughout the world, we need a broader solid base of language skills. Project management skills. You might have picked these up on your own. You can, but there are also certificate programs that you can engage in. And I'm going to take this out of order a little bit. The subject expertise. That subject expertise is important. Many librarians feel that they need to get a master's in a subject area to get a job as a subject specialist. I don't necessarily agree with that. I have an undergraduate degree in biology and a master's in Latin American history. I moved from biology into the social sciences, into the arts and humanities before I picked up my master's in Latin American history. It's your willingness to engage in lifelong learning and take advantage of the opportunities to learn about the disciplines and the interrelationships within and between different academic disciplines. To me, that is key, rather than saying an individual must have a master's or a PhD in history or in literature. So what I would also say in summing up is, how does all this pertain to applying and interviewing for a job? Look at your various experiences, classwork, prior jobs, etc. Identify which of those pertain to you, the skill sets I mean, and which to the job. Look at how you can relate those previous experiences to that application and to that particular description, so that when you are called on for an interview, you can convey your readiness, not only in that cover letter, but in the face-to-face interview. I would also say, and going back to the project management skills and the subject expertise, given the cost of higher education these days, if you have limited funds and limited time, as we all do in one way or another, it's often better to spend your precious dollar looking at picking up official certification in areas other than subject expertise. If you have a subject degree, fantastic. But I would encourage you to look at developing some of these other skills and picking up that subject expertise as you go along in the work world. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and open it up to questions.
That was fabulous, all three speakers. Thank you very much. I see it applauding. I'm applauding too. We have about 6 minutes left. I encourage our participants to ask all or one of our speakers some of your questions, your burning questions that you have regarding academic librarianship. So I see there's a couple here coming in. Let's try to get to those. So this is from Martina to our speakers. Could you give us examples of questions that you ask in interviews? So I will let go of the talk button, and any one of our speakers, please pick that one up and go for it.
Oh, hello. This is Sandy. Well, we do ask questions that relate to the job, and we asked, you know, we try to find out how much you know about the particular, what your experiences are in instruction. It would be, you know, what's your knowledge base and what your experiences are in developing tools. And that's why if you have done any of that, make sure you put it in your cover letter. I think, as you can see, based on the direction we're going with instruction, it's very important that you highlight the tools that you know how to make and put that in the cover letter. You know, I would like to just say one thing. When I told you about flexibility. When I was hired, my very first interview, you know, I was 24 years old, my very first interview at a major academic library. After the interview, the department head asked me the question. Now, I was applying for a history, Italian, language and literature job. That was my background, that was my BA. That was where I was applying directly for a job that I had educational experience with. However, at the end, the department head asked me, now, would you be willing to catalog, it was a cataloging position, would you be willing to catalog mathematics, she asked me. And remember, the job I was applying for was cataloging of history and Italian literature. And I looked at her and I said, I had to stop because I don't know math at all. I looked at her and I said, well, my background is really in history and Italian lit. However, if you think I can do it, I'm willing to give it a chance. And I didn't know until many years later that that was the trick question, to try to determine how flexible I was going to be. Because about 7 years later, another new librarian came for interview, and she came later after she left the department head. She came back and talked to us librarians, and she was all excited, and she said, she asked me if I could catalog math, and I told her I couldn't. And I thought to myself, ha, that was the trick question that this department head had to, you know, to find out how flexible I was. So remember, they're going to ask about flexibility. They're going to ask about, they'll ask about your knowledge base in regards to whatever position you are, you know, being recruited for. And they'll also, I think, ask to find out how much you're into professional activities. You know, are you going to be somebody that is going to be a fully functioning professional, academic professional? Not only are you going to know how to do the job, but are you going to be leaders? Are you going to go into research? Or if not research, are you going to be involved in professional organizations? And that's why if you can participate even in a virtual way with some of these professional groups, like the California Library Association or any professional group, I think it's, and you're going to able to say that you did while in your resume, I think that shows a lot. Okay.
The next question asks about a second master's degree, and it really depends upon the position. There, in the list that I provided earlier, the job ads that are currently being advertised, there's one Asian Studies Curator. For that position, it is so specific, the individual be working with a finite group of faculty, a defined collection. So the individual definitely is going to have a second master's and the language skills. And some of these other jobs that I listed, in fact most of them, it's knowledge of the organization of the disciplines and the interrelationships that's most important. Say, for example, the job ad says social sciences reference librarian. Possibly, depending upon the other skills the candidate would bring, an undergraduate degree in sociology or psychology would be adequate to meet the preferred or requisite experience listed in the job ad. So it really does depend upon the institution and the particular position.
Thanks, Sandy. There's one last question here. We are at 6:30, but go ahead and take this last one. It's from Evan, wondering what was meant by a scalable reference program. Can you clarify on what that would mean?
Right, this is Myra. What I meant by that is, for example, a reference desk serves, say, 10,000 reference queries every year. Is that adequate to meet the reference needs of a student population of, where an institution has 36,000 students? No, it's not. So we would try to develop a reference program that allows more students to contact us, that allows us to create tutorials to help another subset of students out there, that allows, say, students to stand in the stack, send a question to a librarian via some type of technology, and we would respond to that person perhaps 24/7. It's a mix of services that allows a limited number of librarians to serve the largest number of constituents in an effective manner. And it varies by institution and time period, what is scalable and what is sustainable.
Thank you, Myra. So thank you to all three of our speakers, Sandy, Myra, and Karleen. That was so much fabulous information. The recording is going to be saved and will be on the SLIS Colloquia page. Participants, should you have further questions, feel free to email them to me or put them on the SLIS Career blog, and I will get the answers for you from our presenters, and I can post all that back on our SLIS Career blog.